Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Grayley. I'm the Associate Director for Mid-Market Enterprise for Verizon. Go ahead and let CJ introduce himself as well.
Thanks. My name is CJ Weckner, Senior Director for Product Portfolio Management for Verizon Business. So oversee, as I explain it, getting from I want to I'm ready to from a commercial assets perspective. So.
And I am Pat Bowden, Global AI Architect at Cisco. By the way, Craig, I brought my badge. Look at that. That used to be me. That's how long I've been at Cisco, guys.
All right.
Come on.
Maybe it's AI generated. Yeah.
So yeah, Verizon's definitely excited to be a part of the Georgia Technology Summit again. Brian Gorney is normally the one that leads these. Sadly, he's not here today, so you've got me. I apologize in advance, but we're going to make the best of it. So we're going to start out with a question. So working in tech and networks, obviously AI is thrown around a lot, right? We have that term. It's kind of a disruptive term right now. What comes to mind at that point in time when you think of AI, and should we believe the hype?
What's the question? Should we believe the hype about AI? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Well, that is an uneven question. Are people having success with AI? Absolutely. What do you think the failure rate right now in AI is? Of the projects that are started, what percentage of them are successful right now, according to the business running them? Anybody have an idea? 80% fell. So I feel very, but by the way, I'm old. I've been around since the dinosaurs roamed the earth. I feel very 1999 right now about this stuff. And so if you remember the internet in 99, was it real? Of course it was real. But what happened in 2000, 2001? Anybody know? Anybody work for Nortel? So we had a dot-com bust. So we're in the same thing right now with AI. A lot of the things are just a lot of talk, but there are some really great things that are actually happening in the space as well. Is that fair?
I would add to that and say, I think from maybe just to riff on the word a little bit, like, believe the hype. I think I would say believe the potential, right? I think there's a lot of excitement in it because of, I think, what it's unlocked from a possibilities perspective. So in that regard, I think there's potential, but I think there's also aspects like you mentioned, which is, having a balanced understanding of what's out there. So.
Yeah. Make sure when you're evaluating outcome, you need to make money, save money, or reduce risk. And if you're not doing that in your business, what are you doing? You're wasting time and effort. So make sure whatever you're producing in AI is going to give you a return. Fair?
Absolutely.
Good.
Oh, great call out, both of you. So can each of you baseline the audience on where your respective firms are seeing opportunities to engage clients, specifically in enterprise as well, around AI opportunities?
Yeah, I'll start. So Verizon, when it comes to AI, listen, we've been involved in AI for in different ways. I'd say for like the last decade. When we think about kind of our strategy today, it's really kind of a threefold strategy. So number one is how do we drive employee experience and drive operational efficiencies, so reduce operational costs and things. Number two, how do you personalize, right? So how do we drive personalized experiences for our customers, right, as well as teams? And then third, which if you tune in to our Q1 or January earnings, you heard it discuss the Verizon AI Connect, right? And the Verizon AI Connect is really about how we reimagine our existing assets, right? So when we think about space, power, cooling, when we think about our One Fiber, our long haul, our metro, our local, as well as our 5G network with our ability for slicing or even network programmability. These things are a conglomerate, I would say, within the Verizon AI Connect, strategy piece of that. So that's the three areas we're thinking of, and I can expand on that a little bit. But.
Perfect. Hey guys, so for Cisco, what we're doing in AI, you probably heard of the AI Ready Data Center, which is one of our pillars that we're coming to market with right now. We're going to talk about that. But the way I envision what Cisco's doing in AI, specifically I talk to customers on a daily basis, is AI in our products, AI on our products, and AI at Cisco and what we're doing. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. AI in our products, right now we can, for WAN bandwidth, we can determine with predictive analytics, we can determine exactly how much you need and how much you need to provision going forward. So we're doing this in our routing, our switching with AI RRM. So we're doing this across our platforms with predictive analytics, classical AI, generative AI. We have assistants currently. We have 17 AI assistants in our products. One of those we monetized today, which is in contact center. But you'll see that progress for us. AI on Cisco, you'll hear a little bit more about this in a few minutes, is really going to be the data center portfolio, what we're doing in that space, and security. And some of the things some moves we've made in security are pretty novel, and I think pretty interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the session. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So can each of you speak to a client or enterprise, specifically where we had an interesting use case that affected the outcome for the customer? TJ, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, listen, I'll share a few examples, and I think some of the ways that Verizon's using it. First, one of the ways is we talk about training and kind of information inferencing. We've used application Verizon Personal Assistant, which is something today we've deployed from our consumer call centers up to about 28,000 plus employees. And what that does is it allows for questions, right? Questions that customers may have to be answered, but using AI in that regard. And beyond having it deployed in that regard to about 28,000 folks, I think, across the contact centers to date, that application has a 95% answerability rate with a 96% accuracy rate, right? And so when you think about that, what's the purpose of that, right? Well, in that application, as I talked about, kind of our focus and strategies, driving operational efficiencies. The other aspect of it is reducing the cognitive load, right? Allowing them to focus a lot on the customer. Another way that we have used it is a product we recently launched, Verizon Business Assistant, right? And as far as a use case, Verizon Business Assistant is a product that allows customers to establish an SMS or a text-based kind of response system, right? So as customers outreach, it gives them the ability to reach out via text and be able to respond to their customers via text. And those are things that can be informed by the customer's information. They can upload data sets to that and manage it digitally, as well as provide a greater experience for their customers, something even more personalized. So those are two examples.
No, great examples.
Let me give you a couple for me. One thing I'm doing AI at Cisco and what we're doing is interesting, and then I'm going to give you a couple of use cases where we're going to be focused on. One thing I can do today is I can run a tool. I built a data model for Cisco that does 38. So any customer in the room, any of your customers, I can run a report within 30 seconds. So it will give me 30 AI initiatives and 90 use cases in 30 seconds. So it's called 30 and 30. So the ability to be able to throw that wide net and be able to give people the ability to ideate and jumpstart their ideation is really impactful, because a lot of people don't know what they need to do in this space. Does that make sense? That's their biggest challenge. What can I do? What should I do? And by the way, the barometer for me, if you're going to be game-changing AI, you got to be 100x better than you were. With that tool, the 30 and 30, I've been doing that sort of thing for 40 years. I used to work at EY. I used to do that work there. When I did that, I am, compared to 2 years ago, using AI and augmenting my skills, I'm 500x better than I was 2 years ago. So at the end of the day, you got to figure out how you're going to have impact. Now, inside Cisco, we will win or we will lose at the edge. And I think that's probably true of Verizon. I think your biggest wins are going to be in the edge, because you control the edge. By the way, what's the ultimate edge? Right? The ultimate edge is a phone. So at the end of the day, what's an example of that? I was working recently with a customer in Australia, and we were dealing with the railroad there. The biggest challenge they have, the people who are in Australia, the principal owners of railroads are actually mining companies. And so what was happening with this mining company is they were having, because of pedestrians and because of vehicles, they were having multiple people, over 7,000 in 7 years, die because they were hit by railroad trains on that track. So what they did is, with our tooling, they basically they used our IoT networking devices, put those on the track so we get connectivity to the track itself. In addition to that, we use Meraki We talked about it. We use Meraki cameras and use computer vision to capture that data. With NVIDIA, we ran an edge computing device that had a classification engine. And what we were able to do with that is that because of Meraki and because of that classification engine and because of connectivity, we were able to identify when a pedestrian was on the track and alarm or forward that to the train and say slow down or stop, or a vehicle. So that AI was saving human life. So you think about in some situations like that, it could be industrial, it could be manufacturing, it could be in healthcare. AI has the potential to save human life. And I think that's pretty compelling and exciting.
Yeah, I'll maybe segue on that a little bit. And I think great example, awesome solution. And I did not know that about mining companies and trains. But from an outcome perspective, I think just another way, just kind of looking at two things to comment on. One is, outcomes we talk about, it's creating a better experience, I think, at the end of it, right? In that case, it's life, right, which is usually a good experience. But I think, there's many ways I think that you can explore. So going back to the hype, right? I think as far as what are the potentials and what's exciting, and I think even just throw out another one of our use cases is around our Fast Pass, right? Which is how we route customers intelligently as well, right? Understanding the customer dynamics and routing them as they reach out for support or engagement as well to the right or to the best based on some intelligent routing. And the comment on the edge, absolutely. I think that's
I thought you liked that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Nice little hanger there. I think that gets into as we talk about AI. I think in the last few years we've seen the shift from training models, right, into more inferencing, right, and the demand for that type of data processing, right, distributed data processing and inferencing to be able to get the low latency, real-time decisioning is key, and that's where things like our Verizon AI Connect strategy definitely play in.
That's awesome. Hey, I wanted to bring up one other question. I'll ask you guys a question. When you're doing a training of a data model, what are we limited by today? Does anybody know what we're limited by? We have one thing that's limiting our ability to train data models. Does anybody know what it is? Starts with a P, ends with an R, put an OWE in the middle. You have power. So we are limited by power.
I heard you.
Somebody got it?
You got it 18 times.
There you go.
He's like, power.
I'm working with a client right now, by the way, that has their own nuclear power station. They build data center co-location facilities, and they provide their own nuclear power for that facility. That is the game-changing impact for them. Why is nuclear power incredibly useful in a data center environment? Does anybody know why? Stable and on demand. I want it, I get it, I need it, I gotta have it. And that by the way, that opportunity potential is the first opportunity there is $1.5 billion opportunity. So these are massive opportunities that we have, and if you could just solve the problem with power. So anyway, not to one up you on.
Space power cooling. That's right.
That was great. So given the amount of, obviously, enterprise networking expertise we got up here between Verizon and Cisco, what do enterprise architects and network leaders need to be aware of, with AI coming into the market now? And specifically, like in the past few years, we've had a lot of workloads go up to the cloud and everything like that. So how does that kind of play into it?
You taking that first?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I had the opportunity to sit through the session earlier with Brett earlier, and I thought, Brett Taylor, I thought his comment was pretty interesting around the, whatever you're solving for AI today, by the time you act, I'm paraphrasing, you're solving for the past, right, on the stuff. And I think that's interesting, I think, in the concepts of the AI. But I think you touched on the power aspect. I think that for us, what's important to know is that, AI is information, but it's also processing and the inferencing and how those things happen. And for companies, especially in the enterprise space, the ability to distribute that computing load across the network, but also be able to control when and where things are processed, program how they want things to run, but also move those things closer to the prim or on the edge, right, to have that distribution is critical. And so I think it's not just about, I think, what you want to achieve, but how you achieve it. And then I think depending on the scale, looking at what type of ecosystem that you need. And I think for us, we power the AI ecosystem through our assets within the Verizon AI Connect. But I think that's something that's important to consider is how are you transporting the information and connecting it through? Because beyond the power, you also need the data capacity as well, right? And that has to be sustained, right? So 10 gig may not do it. You may need 100 gig, 400 gig, things like that type circuits for processing. But pass to you.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure say the question again real quick.
Yeah, so obviously we've got a lot of networking experience, between Cisco and Verizon now. So what do, network leaders and, enterprise architects need to be aware of specifically with, cloud-based, everything had moved from on-prem to cloud within the past few years, right? What do they need to be aware of
that's
in
a
the
good
AI
point.
space?
So I was this lost train of thought. By the way, where you keep your application, I really don't care where you keep them, right? But at the end of the day, here's what I would say. We know that cloud costs you more money. The question is it justified based on what your business needs are, and that you have to figure that out. What we're seeing in AI is unlike some of the previous applications, the previous eras, is AI. The data needs to follow the AI data model. So as you build a data set in AI, you need to make sure that your data follows your model. So if you're keeping your data in a cloud environment, then you probably should run your AI applications in a cloud environment. If you're keeping your data on an on-premise environment, you probably should keep it on-prem. Does that make sense? But just be really cognitive of that. I have a client right now. Everybody in the room would know who they are. They spend $15 billion a year on AI in the cloud. If they did that on premise, they would spend $3 billion. Justify your $12 billion. Does that make sense? It's a financial conversation. It's really not a technical conversation. If you can justify $12 billion spend and that your AI is going to work that much better in the cloud, then go for it. I think that's going to be. I think what will ultimately happen, there'll be applications that run in one place versus the other. And as far as the networking people, I mean, guys, we just need to be able to provide networking environments to get you wherever the customer lives, their users, to wherever the application lives. And we need to do that in the best possible way. And I think between Cisco and Verizon, we have skills, 40 years for us, and I don't know how you guys count, but probably a billion years for you guys.
Yeah,
of doing networking. We should be very good at that at this point.
Yeah, I would too. No, that's a great call out. So, in the beginning with any kind of inception of new technology, everything's kind of qualitative in the beginning because we don't know what that quantifiable return on investment is. So that's a great call out on making sure that that 12 billion is accounted for, right?
If you're a customer in the room, just justify your spend. If you can justify that, fantastic. I could care less where you put your application workload. Just make sure it's going to operate the best you can possibly do. But I will tell you in the inferencing, which CJ talked about, you're going to be able to do that. It's close to where the user lives. Your edge computing is going to be done in the hospital, in the clinic, on the railroad track. That's where your edge computing is going to be done. Just remember, it's all about performance and about financial justification. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So with any piece of new technology, right, there's always some killer application that comes out. Do you feel like there's one in AI currently or one on the horizon?
I'm going to let you go first.
I mean, killer app, I'd say, first thing that came to my mind was the Amazon shopping app. It kills my wallet, like all the recommendations. I don't know. I'll just use that as an example, I guess, thinking about it. Like for me, an app kills or an application kills if it's, going after what it's hunting. I think like in terms of like that one, the shopping app, I think what I've noticed at least recently is how intelligent the ads and how it decides to recur information back and the way it angles and stuff at that. I mean, that application is enticing me to leverage the service, and I think it does. But, other applications, outside of that, I think, I know I mentioned already, but I think the Verizon Business Assistant is a pretty slick app, just in terms of, or product, not necessarily an app, but the ability to take a model that allows a SMS-based kind of AI interactive support and conversation with customers, and productize that to customers, right, to be able to leverage themselves and do it for them and manage it and stuff. I think it's pretty killer, but again, I think it goes after. I'm biased. I work for Verizon, right? But I think it goes after an intended focus area, and it does that. Yeah, Amazon Prime app kills my wallet. That's for sure.
There you go. Mine too. So what I will tell you is by the way, in the last month, Stable Diffusion has been killed. How? Does anybody know why? That's one of the most impressive apps out there. Does anybody know what happened to Stable Diffusion in this industry in the last 4 weeks? OpenAI released a product. When did they release it? 4 weeks ago. What's it called? ChatGPT 4.0 that actually does image generation. Who in the room has done image generation with ChatGPT 4.0? There's no reason to have Midjourney anymore. I mean, guys, this is crazy. If you do prompt engineering like I do, with that imaging, you can create anything you want, anytime you want it, and that's the only way I do that. So that's crazy awesome. Here's what I would tell you for most of your businesses. What is your core competency? What are you guys good at? Take that and be able to use an application to solve those problems. Example, if you're in pharmaceuticals, what's your biggest goal? To be able to release drugs faster to market. There's 2 reasons why you can do that or not, test trials and MLR. Pharma.ai in Hong Kong last year would release 9 drugs through the FDA process in 1 year, when Lilly produced 1 or 2 in 1 year. They changed their core competency. For a lot of you in the room, that could be RFP responses or RFP requests. What if you could do an RFP response and it was great in 10 minutes? The end. What if you could provide SOWs like that? Game changing. So that's, to me, those are the sexiest things out there. Take your core competencies and make it better. Besides my image generation, I love to create my little images.
Like your badge.
I like my badge. Hey, stop it.
I was about to say, I saw half the hands coming up, and like I've seen you all on LinkedIn with the action figures, so all of them should have been up. So I think that's the killer app right now. Have you seen that?
So I just saw that one. The other one that I've seen recently was taking like celebrities when they're like younger, and it's like the "Do You Remember" song or whatever it is, and they spin around, and then they're older.
Will you take one that does what makes them look like their dog or something?
Oh yeah,
I don't know
if
if
your
that's
dog,
the guy.
yeah, if your dog, that was.
Mine are a
absolutely-
little more practical. I'm a little more practical guy.
Yeah.
My wife does
yeah.
this.
I'm not. That was I'm bad, I guess.
Yeah. You're
yeah.
not practical.
I'm not. All right. So, as far as AI, what excites you and what makes you apprehensive about what's on the horizon with AI?
What excites me is what we just talked about, guys. So the ability to use AI to be able to impact your business, right? All right. So by the way, here's a question for you guys. Who in the room is doing an AI project like the one I just mentioned? You're changing your core competency with AI tooling today. How do you measure the impact? Whoever wants to be brave enough that says they're doing that. How do you measure impact?
The efficiency and the speed with which you are able to create that quote and customer satisfaction as a result of closed business.
So the first part, you have to do something that most people in the room, I know you're doing it, then you know what you're doing. But just in case you guys don't know what this is, you have to measure what the human did before you changed. Measure the human, even if it's sexy RPA, measure the human, measure what they're doing, and the differential is your return on investment or reduction in cost. Correct? Right. So at the end of the day, I think that's exciting for me. And I think as we progress, we had about a half a dozen people put up their hands. In a year, I would love to see everybody put up their hands and say, we're using AI in a way that's profoundly impacting the way I do business. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? You guys good? Good.
Yeah, I think I'll add a little bit. I mean, I think what excites me is a bit of that, which is the prospect, right? You think of like all the things that to come, many of which I think we're still figuring out, right, as we explore. So that's exciting. But I think in the same regard, that's also maybe could keep you up at night, right? Which is where
I
does
didn't
this
answer
go?
that one, but I'll
Yeah.
answer that after you get
Yeah. I think, I guess maybe my mind sometimes goes Terminator, but I don't know if that's fair. But I think, it's where does it go? And more so about like, how does it get there the way we want it to get there, right? So that there is, I think, equity in AI around how it gets used and applied. But I think the other aspect of it is, understanding the requirements that AI has, right? Especially as we get into the inferencing and those real-time decisions and the power. You referenced like a nuclear reactor. I think it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve and progress. I think just in terms of the ecosystem, for us, we have. Like on the Verizon AI Connect, it isn't necessarily deploying new assets, right? This is an opportunity for us to reimagine how we take our existing assets like dark fiber and wave, the many locations that we have as far as telcos and data centers that we have to drive opportunities. And, we partner with all the major hyperscalers today, looking at opportunities and working with different companies. And I think providing an avenue through that suite of offerings will help, but it also is where does it go? Like, what's the next demand? So not necessarily lay awake at night, but just some things top of mind is how do you get to where the puck is going, to use a Gretzky quote. So.
Hey, what I will suggest, by the way, who in the room has heard of Hugging Face before? Okay, about half the room. Can anybody tell me real quick what Hugging Face is?
Repository of LLMs and other transformer-based models.
What he said. It's a repository of all these data models that we've been talking about for years. How many new models do you think were created in the last 6 months? Over 350,000 models in that Hugging Face alone in the last 6 months. How many of those have malware in them? My biggest concern in AI is there's a lot of bad actors, or just people trying to be clever. That could actually upset a lot of environments that are using those models. And so if you're doing a fine-tuning of a model, you need to know what you're doing with what model you're using it with. If you use a foundational model, it's probably a little safer. If you're using a fine-tuned model, you need to be really conscious that there's possibly malware in those systems. So that's what keeps me up at night. Agreed? Yeah. Okay, got it.
No, that's a absolutely great call out. Obviously, like data poisoning is a big thing right now, and that kind of segues into the next question for you, Pat. So, threat landscape has dramatically changed, obviously, with generative AI. So, what mechanisms are in place for generative AI malware?
Oh my God, he just asked me a question I just answered. Wait, here we go. There we go. So first, the first thing we have to determine, is anybody in the room, can anybody in that room right now, do you have a mechanism in place to solve that issue from a visibility perspective? To know that if any of those models are running your environment, how are you doing that today? Does anybody have an idea of how you would do that?
Zero trust.
That's a big word. 2 words. So at the end of the day, what you would do is you need to be able to, first of all, understand what you're looking for. You need to know what a malware looks like in a generative AI model. When you know what you're looking for, then you need a mechanism in place to be able to find it. And then you need to be able to provide things like CASB or DLP or things like that inside your system to be able to get visibility and be able to see what's leaking out of your environment, all those kind of things. So what I would suggest to you, if you want to know more, ask Pat and ask me, would you like a shadow AI risk assessment? Because that's what customers are looking for right now. Now, when you've determined and you have visibility into the models you're using, what happens when you pull a model down, an open source model, say a Llama 3 or Llama 4 model, and you pull it down and you want to use it for a data model you're creating in your environment? So you're gonna take a data set you have, fine tune a data model that's coming down from Hugging Face. When you do that, how do you ensure that there is no malware in that model? How do you do that? Do you know how to do that?
I mostly check the tokens during serialization. That's usually where they creep in, where they leak.
But there are all kinds of ways they can come in, right? So at the end of the day, wouldn't it be helpful if you have a way to discover any of those things? And by the way, some of those things are sensitive. It could be PII, it could be all kinds of things. Again, it's not just about malware. It could be governance issues, it could be regulatory issues, it could be liability issues. All those things can creep in. The last thing you want to do when you're running a data model in production and you're inferring it on his edge network, when you do that, how do you ensure that you're in compliance with regulatory or your governance body in your organization so you're not failing compliance? How do you provide a runtime engine for that data model? And if you ask me how we do that, I would tell you, we do a thing called AI Defense, which is part of this Cisco. So we have a thing called Secure AI Factory. We do that with NVIDIA. No one else in the world has that today. Part of that is AI Defense, And because of our acquisition of Robust Intelligence last year, it gives us the ability to solve everything I just talked about. If you want to know more, hit me on it after the session. But it's pretty cool stuff. And depending on where you're running your workloads. So that, so when you ask me, hey, Pat, we're running a data model here, we're running it in a cloud environment like this, would this work for me? And I can help you with that. Make sense? Yep. Hopefully that wasn't marketing. I don't think it was marketing.
No, I just
I'm
yeah,
not a
with
marketer.
That bad actors. That was good. What do I add to that? Well, I mean, well, you touched on it. I think it's the network aspects, right, for us, right? I think how you manage and drive that traffic and route it, beyond the assets I talked about, within that, I mean, from reliability and secure network, it's one of the things that we definitely drive and I think pairs nicely with solutions like that.
I think we absolutely pair nicely. Plus, you guys have these things called cell phones. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, we do.
We got a couple of them.
Just a couple.
So we actually do have a little time left. So we'd like to open it up for questions specifically around, what our respective firms have covered today around artificial
brave.
intelligence. Be brave. So yeah, anybody have questions? I'm more than happy to come toss the mic off. All right. Or you can come grab Pat's. There you go.
So I guess the concern would be with AI is, let's say you're using a tool like ChatGPT, is that it has certain logic that's specific to that, and it's pulling from certain sources. Would you ever see yourself in an environment where you're actually using multiple generative AIs to keep each other in check?
I see myself there on a freaking minute-by-minute basis.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so here's what I do. The 30 and 30 I talked to you about a minute ago, I use 4 different foundational models to do that. Because I don't trust any of them. I don't trust any model. By the way, let's be clear. I don't trust any engineer either. It's not just, so you have to earn it. And by the way, if it's really important, we have to do peer reviews. So if you're a great engineer, I trust you as much as I know you. But if I'm doing something big with you and you're designing something, I'm going to ask him, can you peer review that? I do that with all AI models because I don't trust any of them. And I think anybody, and so I agree with you. So there's ways to bring your own data and use the foundational models you want to use. By the way, does anybody know that Cisco's invested heavily in one of the large foundational models? Does anybody know who that is? Starts with an A. So you might have just said it, yeah. Anthropic, Claude, Sonnet 3.7. So that Anthropic. So now it's worth $65 billion. Crazy. I told you it's 1999 again. You got anything? Would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, I just think it's an interesting point, but I think you covered it well. But I go back to, like, when I was first, like, getting into, like, what is AI beyond, like, learning how to spell it. Like, I had heard...
Did you figure that out?
Yeah, I turned my logo upside down and add an I. But, I think it's an interesting point, too. And I think as you expand on, like, the information, right, that you have, like the data sources, and they become so massive, right? Finding some of those nuances will likely become increasingly more challenging, right, as they continue to scale. And it's an interesting concept, I guess, going back to the question of, like, well, what do you think about? Which is, like, at what point does that become so hard, right? And then reality is distorted so far away that you don't realize it's distorted. Yeah.
I'll add one more thing to this. It's a little bit different, guys. A lot of our customers, and you may be one of them, but a lot of customers believe you use one data model. That is not the reality of the world. You're going to use, like in a real AI application solving real problems, you're probably using a dozen AI data models. Do you guys agree? Well, you're not using one. And a lot of our customers don't realize that. When we show them that, like, oh, use the right tool for the right job. Yeah. Make sense? Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, question for CJ. I see that you're involved with product and portfolio management. How do you see AI helping you in that pursuit of, making product and portfolio management, better, more efficient?
Thank you.
That's a good question. I think right now, I mean, at least in terms of what like my team and things are working on. So we recently made some updates to how we're moving from left to right across that. Part of that in doing that was also building out some of our governance stuff. I think going back to your, like, what was pre versus post, right? And so some of that I think is, I'm talking more operationally, I think on the process right now is building out some of that information. So taking the all the data that's out there around cycle time, success, performance KPIs, like all of those things, and synthesizing what is a pool of data and actual usable bits of information that we can start to look at and say, how can we take kind of a vast process set, right, and start making even finite or incremental things that at scale are going to make a pretty nominal difference. And so I think from an operational process, that's how we're looking at it in terms of building out our kind of governance and kind of reporting and some of those things. I think in terms of like how we think about products and design products, yeah, I would think similar in that regard. I think it's about kind of information through that. I don't have any, unfortunately, direct examples to share at the time, but yeah.
It's just something interesting to think about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, another way, like as you think about, or I'll say as I think about it, right? What is AI really good at up to this point? And I think the thing that it does is it's good at bringing up crossroads, right? Decision points. What it does is, and I think faster than people can do it, is take a bunch of information or variables and create conundrums or create decision points. That means, all right, so you want to go left or right here, right? And I think the ability to do that across, right, wider scales, faster, more and more often, I think just provides more opportunities to have to make decisions, but those decisions have to be informed. And I think that's where, like, a happy place currently between some of the artificial intelligent tools that are out there and people, right? I don't think that ever it's a replacement, right? But I think it's finding a good synergy about it. So
I'm a big fan of human in the loop. So
yeah, finding how does it synergy. So for us right now, I think it's about
Did you raise your hand?
leveraging the information aspects.
I'll give you get,
Oh, I don't need the mic, yeah.
go.
I can project. So you've talked a lot about, well, a little bit about 1999, right?
Yeah.
And the dot-com.
I'm feeling a little old. Okay.
And you've heard that parallel a lot recently, right? With all the kind of gold rush environment behind this and the capital expenditures, valuations. What are the arguments for the other side, right? That this time is different. Why would this time be different than the dot-com bubble?
You want to try that?
No.
No. I think you could argue that where the economy is slightly different than it was in '99, right? So, you know, I spent the whole '90s doing Y2K, right? So I was a mainframe system programmer. So I spent the whole '90s, you know, repairing crap that apparently didn't need to be repaired, but we found that out later. But we did make some money at it. I think we are in a different climate from an economics perspective. So the question would be, could it be, so that argument, economics, could make it worse or better, right? So the question is, are we in a situation, so if it really is real right now, are we going to be able to get accessibility to semiconductors the way we would need it if it was as real as the internet became, right? And so that, I think that's the challenge right now. So I think if there's any vector that would change what it would be the macroeconomic climate. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Anybody, you want to add anything to that? It's like, no, I don't want to talk.
No, I mean, I guess you could say, because this time we have AI and it could figure it out. But no,
By the way, I'll tell you one thing that's really interesting in the AI world. You know, we have existing models in the business modeling world and the continuous improvement world that we've had for 100 years. These are great models. I use SWOT model and TOES models. So SWOT's been around since 54, 71 years. TOES has been around since 82, so, you know, well, 40 years. Here's the challenge we have. Everybody has to relearn everything every single time. Why do we do that? I don't do that. I take all the models I've known for 40 years, and I use that. I think that's the issue in the industry when he's talking about maybe we'll learn better because of that. I think we often don't. But it would be awesome if we could. Why don't we use existing models that we currently have in the business world or in the continuous improvement world to figure out how we can be better? And I think most people in the AI world do not know those things exist, and I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
yeah, that's a good point.
Anybody else? Can you?
Yeah, thanks. So we're in a AI consulting space, so it's a pretty hot space, so we're enjoying it right now. But one of the struggles that we are facing is a couple of our big clients like Verizon and others, they have these suite of applications per department. And maintaining all this with the speed in which innovation is happening and new models are coming in is becoming increasingly difficult. And security, governance, and all that becomes very good. So in this case, let's say HR has one application that is running a chatbot. Marketing has one chatbot, and many other AI applications. How do you all see in your world everything coming together as a highway where you basically plug information and then use it for your purposes? So that is one thing that we are struggling with helping our clients. I would love your perspective.
Want to do it?
I can answer that too. You can go.
So what you're suggesting, a couple of things. Number one, it is easy, actually, it's relatively easy to build AI applications. If you're not aware of that, now you are aware. Compared to running enterprise production, event-driven, Kubernetes-based architectures and applications, the AI crap is easy. So the challenge we have is how do we consolidate those applications? Everybody's spinning out of control with their own little AI app because it's easy. But you can't scale that application they build over a lot of users because they didn't build it from a production perspective. So how do we get this consolidation? At some point, the businesses are going to have to include IT, which they are not currently doing. And they're going to have to streamline these application development projects. And by the way, what will drive them there will be data. The problem we have with data and AI is substantial. We don't have data access. We don't have data governance. We want to duplicate all our data. There's ways to do this that are smarter. Does that make sense? I think the solution will be getting IT engaged because they do know how to try to build enterprise-grade applications. And right now, all those business units are building them with AI apps, and they're not building them to scale. Does that make sense? Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, partially. So
I'm not saying you're the ones you're building.
That's all we did. But a couple of examples I'll give. One of my marketing friends, he just went in. He runs a big enterprise budget. He used Replit with 2 prompts. He was able to build that application, deploy it, get to going. He was very happy, right? Before he said, "Will have taken me 9 months," but it's not enterprise ready. It's just bare minimum.
So that's exactly
So
what
I
I'm
just
saying.
wanted to validate that you're right. But what is the future solution is something that we don't know. Like having one unified way, we cannot stop progress. Also, how can we kind of meet in the middle and?
By the way, he said something really, really important. He said, "You're right." I'm just trying to get my wife to say that for 38 years, man. Thank you. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just saying, I mean, the concept of like portfolio rationalization is good. And I think even like pre-AI apps and stuff like that's, at least from a large enterprise perspective, is something which is like you mentioned, you've got an HR system over here, and then you've got a performance management system over here, but they're not speaking the same language or not maybe connected, and that then what does that do? That puts additional operational costs because then you've got to figure out how you create the medium in between. And I think so that challenge I think has existed but to your point I think does now. And I think one of the differences is that you've got some of the ease and speed at which now you can start spitting out things. And then you get into the conundrum of the rubber band ball, right, where you've now created all of these apps and these mechanisms and you're 1,000 rubber bands deep, and then someone looks up and then you go, hey, we're a little bit off, we need to change, but it's 40 bands deep. And now what's that cost look like? So I think there's some rationalization, I think, is part of it, right? What is the plan, right? So maybe it's a governance piece in there that says like, before we do this, are there certain acceptance criteria, standards that the organization itself is looking to achieve? So it's not nearsighted use case solving for, but it is vision solving, right? Which is what are the outcomes and what are we ultimately trying to do, and what's the genesis to that through the mechanisms that we need to build off of that. So the speed is different. I think the problem is similar to large scale applications that we've had prior.
I agree. By the way, hit me up afterwards because I have more to add with security observability that I can maybe help you on that. Do you have a question? Can you say it loud enough or you? Okay.
You both mentioned the governance factor here a couple of times. Do you feel like right now businesses are appropriately exercising that governance, or do you feel like there's some big weak spots that you've consistently seen when it comes to AI?
Well, he may do a better job of answering that politically, so I'll let him do it first. Well, hell no. Some are better than others. How about that? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, listen,
Blind spots that you guys have seen in the governance?
So I see it a lot, and what I'll tell you, what I see is most customers, everybody wants it. 97%, according to our readiness report, 97% of people want AI, and they want it now. 13% are ready for it. And one of the biggest obstacles for almost all our customers is governance. Some of the bigger ones are better at it, but like Verizon, I'm sure, are great at it. But at the end of the day, most of our customers across a large swath are struggling with governance. So if you're doing consulting, the first thing you would do is you would do governance and make sure that you have a structure for this. I think that means we beeped out.
Yep, we did. All right.
well, a quick answer to that would be, for our focus, right, it's really around employee experience, operational pieces, driving personalized experiences, and then the Verizon AI Connect as far as powering the AI ecosystem. From a consulting piece on like exploring the other firms, I have a ton on that, but I would wager to say there's varying degrees likely, but it's, I think that's a topic of discussion for sure.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time today.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.